Minnesota Public Radio.
Well, look who's coming through that door. I think we met somewhere before. Hello, love. Hello, love. Well, where in the world you been so long? I missed you so since you've been gone. Hello, love.
Oh, welcome back, friends. Welcome back to the beautiful Clover Studios in Rock Creek, Minnesota. Today's show is sponsored by Salzer's Hardware. If they don't have it, there's a really good chance you don't need it. Salzer's Hardware, Pine City, Minnesota. All right, guys, thank you very much for that intro. For all you Garrison Keeler, I was on the road out in North Dakota, and one guy brought up Garrison Keeler, and so the old Prairie Home Companion. When I lived in North Dakota, I lived from 2009 through the winter of 11. I worked 9 and 10 up on the bridge in Drayton, North Dakota, the pile driver and cofferdam builder, and then I lived, when that got done, I went to the oil fields out in Williston, and it's a long drive, I'll tell you that. That was a heck of a morning commute. And Prairie Home Companion, not the most exciting, but it got you down the road. Soil health. Is truly healthy soil obtainable on our farms? And realistic goals. We all have a context that we live in, and you're going to hear a lot about context because the regenerative ag folks have added context. So context is your environment that you live in, plus are you working off the farm or full-time? Do you have help or no help? Cattle, no cattle, or livestock, no, you know, every little thing you have. Do you have to spend your time fixing equipment, or do you have new equipment, and everything like that to overcome or to meet some challenges on your farm? And that's your context you live in. And so how realistic is healthy, living, functioning soil? That's between you and God, I guess. I don't know who else is going to make that decision for you. So science will tell us that healthy, living, functioning soil is soil that can handle heavy rain, flood, drought, be resistant to wind and water erosion, and it can heal back from some of them events, and it should be able to handle traffic, whether it's cattle or livestock, not just cattle, but livestock, or our equipment. And then it should be able to produce a good, abundant fruit that is nutrient dense, that took very little fertility or inputs to grow, and it will be free of weeds, disease, and insect pressure. I got you pointed this way because there was several families of bald eagles. They've probably left now that I'm here. There was three mature white-headed bald eagles, and there was 4 yearlings or 2-year-olds that were still brown that have been here all day long, and so they were quite pretty. They were actually in the yard where in the winter we lost a couple calves, and so I just put them in a snow pile, and I thought, well, when it gets close to spring, we'll dig a hole and bury them. And the eagles are cleaning them up, and I will let the eagles keep cleaning them up, and we're getting some snow flurries. Yay! And so happy 20th or whatever of April. What the heck is the date? The 24th. Happy 24th of April with scattered snow flurries. And so that's great to have that definition of functioning soil, but then we come back to our own farm and we're looking at it like, hey, wait a minute, you know, to grow a crop, we need lots of inputs, and I don't, in my mind, I have a hard time seeing some of this stuff come true, but the other stuff, that breeze is coming up the back of my neck. Some of the other stuff, like I know we can grow a beautiful corn crop if you had a clover stand like this and you took it out and you put corn in here, sure, we could grow a corn crop, a very great corn crop with little to no inputs. Yep, that's easy to do. To grow this corn crop with little to no inputs and say, I'm hardly going to need any herbicide, fungicide, or insecticide, that's the ones that I'm personally having a hard time. I understand the science behind it. I'm having a hard time accepting that I'll ever be there someday, but you never know what next year's going to bring. And so, if we look at some of the points of soil health, and so they said, well, healthy living soil should be able to handle flood, drought, water events, and resist erosion. And I think your background here behind me is a perfect example of that. Is back when we had fully dead, non-functioning dirt, we were told to tile along that hillside. On each side of the hill, put several laterals and hook it to some mains and run it out each end. And I'm glad we didn't, because at the time we were more concerned about the erosion than we were because the water comes out the hillsides and it lands on the hilltop, it seeps down and then comes out the hillside. So my whole life growing up, you could go through the water here, you could go through some mud on the flat ground, but as soon as you started climbing that hill, then you were done. And so yep, people had recommended we need to tile that away, and I thought, you know, something's not right there. Why? We do not have an excess water problem, we have an infiltration problem through most of the Midwest here, and I will stand behind that, because healthy functioning soil is going to have 3-4 inches per hour of water infiltration capacity. And when we were on full tillage out here, we had a 1/2 inch per hour if we were lucky, and you would not be able to repeat that very often. And so think about a 3-inch rain event overnight, 3 or 4 inches overnight. All that water, that first 1/2 inch would fall, saturate that top layer of soil. Since the soil had no structure, there was nowhere for that water to keep going down, so the first 1/2 inch saturates the top, the rest comes running down the hill and leaves the field. And now we have somewhat living healthy soil. We're a long ways from a Dave Brandt type thing, but we've came a long ways from where we were. And so now, instead of watching the wind carry the dust off that hill like snow in the wintertime and water racing down that slope, now we can take 3 or 4 inches per hour, and very soon you could repeat that test again. And so you get 3 or 4 inches overnight. When somebody asks you how much rain did you get, you'd be able to say all of it. And so the amount of water, because of other soil health factors going on to help us achieve our goals, you're going to have residue on top of the soil, and that's going to hold that water back from running. We've got lots of pore space in the soil, so that allows us to get to that 3 to 4 inches per hour. So that water is just going to just keep going into that soil, and that's going to be fantastic. And so yeah, at the same time, the field right here is where I did that long-term study of not applying phosphorus. Soil scientists say phosphorus is a fallacy. Buying MAP and DAP from the co-op, if you got money to just throw away, then absolutely buy MAP and DAP. But if you want to build soil health and you want to actually be more profitable for the farm, stop buying MAP and DAP. Use a better quality phosphorus if you need phosphorus at all. And so we can see fertility wise that we can start to grow fertility. That's another part. And so when people tell us we have more healthy soil now than any time in history, God, I hope that isn't making wind noise, because there wasn't a breeze 10 minutes ago when I started, and it's really starting to kick up now. So when people call me names and tell me how stupid I am and blah, 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 because I say that we farmers are farming dead, non-functioning dirt, and some guys have an absolute hissy fit and they cry and stomp their feet, even though they're 60 years old, they're still going to run to their daddy and tattle. They'll say, well, we have healthier soil than ever because look at our yield. Well, if we had truly healthy functioning soil, you would need very little nitrogen to grow that crop of corn, a good crop of corn. There's also a difference between the carbon content of your soil and the yield that it can sustainably produce every year. So on this field here, if it was dead dirt, black dirt farming, we would be buying 180 or whatever we'd be optimistically buying 200 bushel, throwing fertilizer out here for 200 bushel. That means we'd be putting 200 N credits on, plus if we listen to the retailers, a lot of P and K. And so, but if we had healthy functioning soil, maybe with almost no fertility inputs, now context of my area, I might always need some type of mycorrhizal seed treatment or some type of biological or something in the furrow to help that early seedling get going, because we're usually planting into frozen non-living soil. You know, 40-degree soil usually doesn't have an abundance of life and mineralization going on, and so we would either learn to delay planting a little bit or change things up, or I'll always have to use some type of stimulant on the seed. But we would nonetheless, if we had a carbon value in the soil and nutrients in the soil that allow us to do 150 bushel corn, that means every year we come out here, we could do 150 bushel corn with almost no inputs. That means when regulations come into play, we aren't affected, and things like that. And also, we're not affected by the input prices and stuff, because we know we can come out and with our soil health, we can do 150 bushel corn today. We can plan on buying 200 bushel corn. But when we're always trying to buy that yield, it does not take much of a weather event. Like so far this spring, people are already getting, it's only April 24th, we got plenty of time to get a crop in, but you got a lot of people already crying and whining that it's getting late for planting, and you're just like, you know, okay. I'm not talking people in southern Iowa. Like, I get it. If you're in southern Iowa and it's April 24th, you're probably pretty frustrated. I get that. If you're 15, 20 minutes down the road and you're starting to get frustrated, like, we ain't going to be planting corn on May 1st, might as well throw in the towel for the year already, like you know, slow your roll a little bit there, Turbo. We can calm down a little bit. And so what's more profitable for the long term? Growing 150 bushel corn every year that costs you really nothing and had many benefits. Like if you had cattle, you have grazing dollars, you know, and rotations and cover crops that can offer other revenues. Chances are, if your soil health before this corn get in, we might be able to take a first cutting, maybe graze for a few days, graze behind it afterwards, or take a cutting afterwards. There's a lot of opportunities when we're doing soil health practices. And the weeds, fungicide, and insecticide, that one I'm really curious about, because they'll now say that weeds with a Brix readings of around 8 can no longer function very well. Weeds love it when we apply lots of nitrogen and potassium fertilizer. Weeds love it when we do a lot of tillage and then we finish with a smooth drum roller, because weeds love soil that has no oxygen, it's compacted, has no soil structure, and has lots of nitrogen and potassium fertilizer out there. That is what weeds thrive in. We can see this because we can look at our history of herbicide use, and has anybody ever said, boy, I did a really good job last year on herbicide out there, I don't think I'm going to need any. But we can pull a soil sample and say, man, and we can dig a hole in the ground and say, wow, look at that soil structure. You've got, you know, the 25% airspace, you've got good fertility, very little compaction, lots of available calcium and phosphorus and boron and zinc and copper. You will not have weed problems. And they also say with a Brix readings of 11, you will not have bugs, because most bugs, and now I've heard this many times before over the last couple years, but now this year I've heard a lot of people talking about it, which is really exciting. It's giving me a lot of hope. When we get to a Brix readings of 11, the bugs cannot feed on that plant. Your soybean aphids, alfalfa weevils, grasshoppers, a lot of your corn, rootworms, and them types of bugs can't feed on a plant that has a Brix reading of 11 because they don't have a pancreas, and that plant is too high in sugar, and the sugar turns to alcohol inside that bug and kills the bug if it tries to feed on it. And I love that. I love hearing that. And at a 13 on the Brix readings, most fungal pathogens, i.e., you know, we have a lot of them in soybeans, your frog eye leaf spot and brown leaf spot and all them kind of things. And we also have a common one called white mold. White mold cannot live in a soybean plant with a Brix readings of 13. And tar spot cannot live in corn with a Brix readings of 13. So to farm without fungicides and insecticides, that one I can easily understand. I do not understand how I get Brix readings in weeds. Do I fertilize the weed to correct the Brix readings and do better? You know, them are my questions there. But yeah, so evaluate your own farm. If we're going to talk about healthy soil, what is healthy soil? What is obtainable? Evaluate your own farm. Take a shovel. Look, do I have cottage cheese or is it dense, compacted, clumpy? Use a potentiometer to see where your compaction is. Are you under 200 psi or not? Do you need to rely on grid pattern tiling? Do you have to buy, you know, if you're broad acre fungicide and insecticide, clearly we have dead non-functioning dirt. But the flip side is, the soil scientists will say, come fall time, when it's muddy, don't go out and harvest your crop and cause a lot of disturbance. Now, if I have healthy soil, and I've shown many times in this field and all these fields that when I have structure on my soil, I can travel through now where I wasn't able to travel through years ago. This field is a prime example. Like I said, the water seeps out the hills. And so back when I had the 4640 as my big horse, we had a wet spring. I was getting impatient. I was still very full tillage back then. And, battery time. I was very full. Welcome back. Thank you after that brief commercial interruption. We were very full tillage back then and didn't know anything about soil health. I was still claiming to be a victim of my environment and all that kind of stuff. There we go, camera. Thank you very much. And so I literally, you had these wet spots on both sides of that hill, and I literally just took the long log chain and hooked from the drawbar of the digger to the hitch of the tractor, and when I got to a water spot, I'd go around it with the tractor and the digger would kind of go through it because I got sick of getting stuck. And now I'm farming right through them spots like nothing. And so if we had structure, come a wet fall or a wet spring, we'll have less mud to deal with. But when you're saturated, you're saturated. I don't care how healthy your soil is. And so the soil scientists will say, well, just stay out. Don't cause damage to your soil. Well, we have a living to make, and when it comes to the end of May, my attitude will be a whole lot different. I'll be chaining the 4430 to the front of the Massey to help drag it through the mud spots if need be. But I mean, we have to have realistic goals and stuff, you know, just like harvest time. They'll say, well, don't harvest if it's muddy, you know, keep the grain carts out of the field and stuff like that. And I say unto thee, yeah, I don't know how well that would work when it comes time for soybean harvest. You don't have time to say, gosh, you know, I'll wait a couple weeks and by then it should be firmed up. Yeah, in a couple weeks there's also a great chance it's under 2 feet of snow and you're never going to see that field again until May. And or April sometime you might see the soybeans again. And to keep the grain cart out of the field, well, by golly, there's times that grain cart, by running around the field, is the only thing keeping the combine going. We had a lot of years where I combined for guys, and yeah, they were on more dead dirt, but still, you're combining along, and boy, you get 3, 4, 5,000 pounds in that combine. That's not a whole lot of weight, but it was enough weight to start bogging the combine down. So you get that grain cart under you, and so you make 2 dumps to keep the combine light as possible and empty, basically keep the auger, the hopper empty. And once the grain cart got 10 to 15,000 pounds in it, you ran it up and got it empty as well to keep it light. And so you do what you have to do. Now, corn harvest, yep, I can wait on corn harvest. You look at the forecast, like, man, we are just muddy wet. And you look at the forecast and be like, you know what, in 2 weeks we're going to be frozen. Not a whole lot of snow in the forecast, but a lot of cold. Yeah, then we'll wait. But yeah, there's a lot of realities or our context we live in that makes it very difficult to do this. Like nitrogen management is another great example of the context we live in. A soil scientist is going to say, well, your plant needs a little bit of nitrogen around V5, so apply some then, and then late in the season it's going to need a lot more nitrogen, and so you shouldn't apply any until then. And you're like, yeah, that's great. Where we used to be on nitrogen to where we are, we've came a long ways. 20-30% reduced since 2018 has been working well. This year I'd like to find another 10 to 20% reduction in nitrogen bill. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but actually having this argument with the soil scientist of why are you putting urea in your strip till, because I can either put it in strip till or I can come in very early into my corn with my sprayer and side dress, and honestly I would rather have it in the strip till because then I save a lot of traffic damage and plant burn and potential leaching or runoff of the nitrogen post-emerge versus pre-emerge. When it's in the strip till slot, that nitrogen is tucked down in the soil in the root zone and seems to do a lot better job. And so it's the necessary evil that I have to live in right now. Now maybe someday down the road I hope I have enough nitrogen building in the soil someday that I don't have to worry about a late season application and spending thousands and tens and fifties of thousands of dollars on being able to afford a high enough sprayer to be able to top dress my corn like that. And so them are some great examples. Boy, what a smooth video. What an easy listening video today. And so guys, thank you very much for watching, and comment below, what is your context challenges that you have to live in? How obtainable do you think some of them soil health goals are for you? And or if you've already done some, what have you been able to accomplish on your farm? And we'll go from there.